Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. So, on today's episode of the Total Podcast, I have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Heather Spence. She is doing some incredible things, and I will let her tell you what she does. It's just incredible. So, you've got to hear this. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you'll be seeing this on my YouTube channel. So, without further ado, here we go. So, Heather, thank you so very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, it's my pleasure.
You're welcome. So,
You have
Heather,
such a lovely voice. It's going to be delightful to talk with you.
oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I try to make it a very inviting and safe environment for my guests. So, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So,
Sure.
all right. So, Heather, why don't you tell us about your background, where you went to school, and how you got into being a psychologist and the things that you're doing. This is very incredible. So, tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started out actually really interested in music, and my interest in music and sound and wanting to understand sound led me to the science part. So I went my undergraduate college was George Washington University, and I went on a music scholarship for cello, but the scholarship did not require me to major in music. So I took a lot of music classes and I did a lot of music, but I was also able to explore biology and physics. So I tried to create my own mashed up major of all the things that I liked about studying sound, from the all of the different science components, the health components, the music components, and then realized that that was going to take me way too long to graduate. So I majored in biology, I minored in physics. Then I went on, I got a master's degree in marine biology, because when I was studying for doing the research in my undergraduate honors project, I was introduced to this amazing critter, the snapping shrimp. That's the size of your pinky finger, but it makes all of this noise underwater. And I realized sound travels so well underwater. Marine biology is perfect for me because I can combine all of my interests. I can think about sound as a central part of marine ecosystems, and I get to go to the beach. So then I studied marine biology. I studied invasive species, dispersal and crabs, invasive crab species and their impacts on shellfish aquaculture. And then I did a PhD in behavioral neuroscience. So that's where the psychology piece comes in. And I'm studying dolphins and noise in the ocean. And that was really amazing because I went from studying invertebrates to studying marine mammals. And those are very different worlds because when you talk to marine mammal people, the shrimp are noise to them. And then I basically started my own consulting business and did a variety of interesting things, including working for a video game company. I did some editing, um, and then I got the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship, and that helped me land one of my positions, which is consulting for the U.S. government. But I also continue my research. I have a research program based in Mexico, and it's called Ocean World of Sound. And we're studying, helping coral reefs by learning about them, engaging communities, and saving them through the sounds that they make.
That is amazing. Now, tell me, when you started school and you had this journey, did you ever envision things turning out the way that they've turned out for you career-wise? I mean, this is just incredible.
Uh, I mean, I had certain things in mind. So I've always followed my interests and passions, and where I've gone to the things where I think not because they're, you know, easy or make sense, but because it's a place where I think I can make a difference. Like me personally, where can I make a difference and make the world a better place and help us all get along, all that good stuff. Um, it's been a little bit challenging because the path that I go on is not necessarily one that other people recognize as a legitimate path. So I've had a lot of people saying no to me along the way. I'd say like, oh, well, I'm interested in both of these things and I want to do both. And people would be like, oh, honey, that's not the way it's done. And you're gonna fail. And you can't do, but you have to pick one thing. And I wasn't trying to be country. I don't know how to pick one thing. It's to me, all of these things, they're not all separate things. They're all part of trying to understand the world in the way that I can. So so I didn't pick, and I've done multiple things, and I merged them together, and I think there's starting to be a better realization now. And there's even some terminology coming out, transdisciplinary, boundary spanning. These are kinds, generalists. These kinds of ideas are, kind of coming out as like, well, actually, it's kind of important to have people who can talk across disciplines, and that innovation happens in that kind of gray area between disciplines a lot of times. So I think it's, for anybody who's like out there feeling like they have to just pick one thing, that's fine. But if you don't want to pick one thing, that's also fine.
Yeah, and see, that's where I really agree with you on this because I have all of these different interests. I enjoy I'm a drone pilot.
Mm,
I enjoy teaching kids. I enjoy doing my podcast. So I have all these interests. I enjoy writing. So I never liked it when people would tell me, "Oh, you should do one thing." I have all these different interests, and so I try to find ways of being able to do them all at the same time.
yes.
And to me, that makes not only does it make me happier, but I
Mhm.
feel like I'm accomplishing more.
Yes. You've got your unique take on things, right? You've got a perspective that's totally unique that nobody's going to have because you're mashing those things together.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. So tell me about your work with dolphins and the sound. I mean, that's just fascinating. And you being able to play instruments and seeing the tie between the two, that's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. So, in the realm of people who are studying acoustics and studying sound scientifically, there are certainly musicians part of that crowd, but there are a lot of people who aren't. And to me, it's really important this the sound training, like training your ear, I think is really important. So all of the ear training that I had as a musician, well, and continue to have because I continue to be working in music as well really helps me when I'm listening to sounds. And it's it seems like an obvious thing that if you're studying sounds, you should listen to them. But I will say a lot of times what happens is, there's a lot of sound data. And the thing about sound data versus visual data, you can look at a graph and there it is, right? Is you see it and it's there and it's a moment in time you can capture that. Sound is a time-based medium, right? So like a podcast, right? Like you can read the transcript at your own pace, but if you're listening to the sound, that you're listening to that sound at the pace that it happens,
Right.
right? And so so listening to acoustic data is time consuming. So I get it, but also translating sound data into visuals, you're not capturing everything,
Right.
right? There's choices that are made when you're graphing that stuff. So I think making sure that you're also listening to data if it's sound data, you should also listen to it. So I think the music training really helps for that. And it's amazing the sounds underwater are so cool, that I just wish more people could hear them because here on land that's not something that we're generally exposed to unless somebody actually surfaces those sounds and plays them for you.
For you, what do you find most interesting about being able to put everything all together, the different disciplines that you're doing?
I think it's really exciting when there's a nice connection that happens, so or like when I there's a problem I need to solve and I realize I have a tool to solve that from this like very different thing that I've done. So, one example of this, so I was studying shrimp behavior and there were two shrimp at a time and I was trying to figure out how to mark down their behaviors and I realized that some work that I had done in stage combat, of all things, of sword fighting on stages, choreographing that, that the notation that we used for that actually would work pretty well for the shrimp, you know? And you just don't know when those kinds of connection moments are gonna happen. But I really do enjoy exploring underwater soundscapes using scientific principles and music principles, and really literally playing with the sounds helps me to feel like I can really immerse myself in that underwater sonic world.
Hmm. And what do you feel, at least during your time doing all of this work, have been the most important advancements in this?
So I think one thing I'm pretty proud of being part of. When I started listening, learning about the ocean by listening to it, it was a little bit of a crazy thing. Most people looked at me like, what are you talking about? Now it's got a little bit of more like popular media attention, but and also the technology has advanced a lot, so there's a lot more that we can do now more easily.
Hmm.
But I think you know that that moment of here. So what the main thing I do is I put a recorder underwater and leave it on the seafloor, and then I just leave it there. And so you don't know what you're getting. And then you have that aha moment when you get it back up and you're like realize like, okay, we're actually hearing what's going on. And one of the things that I realized after listening to data, analyzing the data, so all of these sounds that are happening at night. Sometimes it's more interesting stuff that's happening during the day. And visually, you can't capture that. You got to do it with sound because
Right.
the only way to capture that stuff at night is either go there and it's got a human presence, put a light, you could put a camera, but you still have to have some kind of light source for the camera to work. There's no way to really capture what's going on then without inserting something extra there that's going to influence their behavior. So it's so cool to be able to eavesdrop on the ocean at night. I think, and to realize that that's such a rich sonic tapestry that's going on. That's a huge finding that helps us understand the importance of listening in understanding the ocean.
Now, also, too, I've always been fascinated with the fact that, especially when you see people working with animals at places like SeaWorld, how
Mhm.
they're able to communicate with them and the animals understand the prompts. And
Yes.
I find that animals are far more intelligent than a lot of people give them credit for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, like how smart is this animal? Is it as smart as a 3-year-old human? Is it as smart as a 7-year-old?" And I have to get people to take a step back. And go, okay, when we're talking about intelligence, right? I think it's important to think about intelligence in terms of what is intelligent for that species, for that animal, because let's take a dolphin, right? They live in a totally different world than we do, and their body is shaped totally different than ours. So, when we humans design intelligence tests for animals, like it's very from our perspective. And so I like to say, what if the dolphin designed an intelligence test for you? Would
Right.
you pass it? I don't know. Probably not, because it would probably involve some form of elaborate bubble formations that you would have no idea how to do, right?
Right.
So, it's like dolphins are as intelligent as dolphins should be for they're intelligent in their way for their environment. It's same with all other creatures are smart in their world. And if we tried to enter their world, oof, I don't think we do very well.
Yeah, and I think people also want to put a human personality with the animals, and it doesn't work that way.
Yes. Yes. Now, with dolphins, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons why humans tend to connect pretty well with dolphins is that they're very social creatures, like us, right?
Right.
We're very socially oriented. We want to know, we don't want to be up in everybody's business, right? Like, what are they doing? Oh, like, they get something I didn't get. Like, what's going on there? So, so one of the, some of the interesting research on dolphins is really about how they track their social interactions, and they're really very, it's very elaborate. Whereas there are some animals are pretty solitary. right? And so that's a little bit more foreign to us. We don't understand that as well. So when we feel that when we feel that like social connection, I think that helps us connect with another species when we feel like there's some similarities with how we do things.
Now, do you find between species there are similar ways that they communicate amongst each other, like seals communicating with seals and dolphins communicating with dolphins? Do you see any similarities in terms of sounds or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so there's some similarities that are due to them being kind of related species, right? So if they've got some similar anatomy and things, they're probably going to do some things a similar way, not always. And also sometimes there's similarities because they're communicating in a certain type of environment. And because of the constraints of the environment, they're going to be using the same kinds of tools for communication because that's what works well in that environment. Um, there's a wide range of types of, for example, sounds. Now, there's communication in other ways too, right? There's visual communication, all kinds of smell communication, other kinds of things too. But for sounds, there's a wide variety of sounds that are made, and I think there's probably a lot. Well, I know there's a lot that we haven't really uncovered yet either as humans because we're still kind of thinking about it from our point of view. But one of the things to keep in mind, for example, species that echolocate, like dolphins, um, they're using sound as part of their visual system as well. And so if they're doing sound for sight and for auditory communication, I mean, that's gotta impact things.
Right.
So so it's and then there's also things that happen like in a noisy environment, right? That also changes how species will communicate. Sometimes they'll actually change the pitch of what they're, saying, or they might speak louder in order to be heard. So those kinds of things can impact it too. There's a lot of different variables involved.
Now, I wanted to mention too, because this is mentioned on your website, about invasive species being in terms of them just disrupting ecosystems. Talk little bit about that and how that affects especially the oceans.
Yeah. As we have more and more connectivity of especially human activities around the world, that's an opportunity for critters to, take a, hitchhike on a vessel or on an airplane or any of these things. I mean, it could happen other ways, but those are big ones. For example, like ballast water in ships, stuff like that. Um, what 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 I think I should distinguish is you could have some species in a new place, enter a new place, and nothing very much could happen. Maybe
Right.
it's not really well suited to that new place, or maybe it just kind of minds its own business. But there are certain species that get to the new place, and it's like optimal conditions for them to just take over. So maybe they were very maybe they're very adaptable. Maybe there's no the predators that they used to have in their old environment they don't have in the new environment, and that's where things get really tricky. Is when those That's when things get into that kind of invasive species worrisome status. Is when they start to take over the native species and take over roles, but maybe they don't do it in the same way that those other species did. Maybe they don't serve the same roles that the native species do, but they're taking over. That can disrupt the whole balance of the ecosystem. And sometimes people say, oh, well, let's just remove the invasive species. Well, when you remove, if an invasive species has really taken over an area and you remove it, and that's a little bit of a tricky thing because you're leaving it open to, you don't know what's going to go back and colonize that. And so sometimes people will be like, oh, we'll just remove all the invasive species. Or even more tricky, hey, this ecosystem is out of balance. Let's add this non-native species to fix that. I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Like, read the literature. That has like never worked out well, right? Like,
Right.
so it's this thing where, okay, some non-natives, not too big of a deal, but some invasive species, a huge, huge, huge issue. Like lionfish in the
Right.
Caribbean.
Excellent one.
Okay. I
Yes.
mean, you see those things, they are they are so tough and they eat everything. And that's not it's not really something like that. Like the predators are like, what do I do with this spiky poisonous thing? Like, oh, um, but there's things we can do. Like humans can eat lionfish. Lionfish are tasty. Humans can eat them. Hey, that's great. But they're so tough, and they really reproduce very quickly. So stuff like that it can upset an ecosystem pretty fast.
Now, talk about too, because this is a huge one, coral reefs. They've always fascinated me.
Yeah.
And you have issues with some with the bleaching and everything. I mean, they're a huge part of an ocean ecosystem. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit about coral reefs and their importance in our environment because they're huge in
They're
the
huge, and
oceans.
I will add, they're important for our environment. So we think about coral reefs, a lot of them are serving a purpose of softening the the ocean, the impact of the ocean on the land, right? So sometimes like, oh, land and ocean, it's not that separate, right? It's all one interconnected system, and the coral reefs are really protecting us quite a lot, and they are a very important home for commercially important species. They're this the corals themselves form this structure that really supports so much life. And when they get sick, it's a really big deal. And we're trying to figure out what are the different factors and how to make sure that coral reefs stay healthy. And we know certain things. We know water quality is important, water temperature is important, right? Anything that's going to be impacting. So, like with you mentioned the bleaching, right? So some people think if a bleached coral is a dead coral, that's not exactly right. It can lead to that, but the bleached coral means so the corals have this relationship with basically algae. So they have like a plant animal kind of relationship, and that's what gives it the color. And so it goes away, then the coral's left without the color. It can live like that, but it doesn't have that symbiotic benefit. What happens though is like if things get too the conditions get too extreme too fast, the coral's not going to make it. So, and the other thing is corals tend to grow fairly slowly. So we have to be very careful as humans because we're always going to have some kind of impact. That's a given, and we could talk more about that because I view it as what kind of impact do we want to have, not have no impact, because we'll always have sort of impact. But where we have to be really careful is fast impact, because fast and major impact, because when that happens, it's very hard to bounce back. That happens for ourselves too, right? If so, you have a big extreme thing happen, it's hard to bounce back.
Right. Now, one thing that we've been going through here in San Diego County, especially the southern part of the county, is we have a lot of sewage coming across the border that's affecting not only areas like Imperial Beach, but it also, you go up the coast, north up the coast, and the dirty water, the polluted water affects Coronado, other cities in between. And a study just recently came out where they're realizing that air quality up north is from the ocean, with all of the
Mm.
toxic things that are in the water. There are airborne particles that are coming out of the water affecting things. So, I mean, that's humans' effect, like you said, on the environment can just be monumental,
Yeah. Yeah, and those interconnections, because yeah, ocean and air aren't totally separate, right?
right?
There's a kind of barrier there at the surface of the water, but there's connectivity. I mean, ask any like physical oceanographer, right? Like the air water interface, right? That's a thing. So it's we 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 there's that the kind of an old unfortunate thought, like, oh, you don't really see into the ocean, like, oh, the ocean's like one big trash can. Like, no. No, we're that's like putting your trash in your house, like just letting it pile up. Like you don't want to do that because we're relying on the ocean so much for so many things. We're yeah, as for our air, for our weather, for our food, for the protection of our coastline.
Also, tell me. And in all of the years of your research and working in this, what do you feel are the major issues that are probably going to have to be addressed sooner than later?
So, one big one is plastic pollution. It is being talked about a lot. I think it's a little bit difficult to talk about things like, oh, well, how long does it take for plastic to biodegrade? Because it's really not that simple. You get these, microplastics, so it breaks down, but you still have these toxic little pellets of plastic. They absorb toxins. It's really a difficult thing. Once you get it out in the environment, it's really hard to kind of undo that and get it back in any
Right.
kind of safe way. And people will say, "Oh, I can do it," but um, the people who are like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," tend not to be biologists. They tend to be engineers. Sorry, engineers. Um, or just people who are like, why can't we just do this? Like, well, it's actually a little bit tricky. Um, so that's something where I think we need to just be a lot more careful about the plastic we produce and use. So people tend to talk a lot about recycling. And maybe they'll even say, oh, reduce, reuse, recycle. That is actually in an order that matters. Okay, it's not recycle, reduce, reuse. No, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. And the reason is because the optimal thing to do is to reduce production and usage, right? That's the best thing. If you can reduce, that's great. And if you can't reduce, well, reusing, right? That's also great. By the time you get to recycle or anything else that's kind of taking a lot of human and other energy and effort and infrastructure to kind of replace or redo something, you're it's never going to be as good as if you just didn't create that situation in the first place. I'm not saying don't recycle. I'm saying let's focus more on the reducing and the reusing because that's where we're going to have the most impact. So I already forgot what your question was, but that was, I
Well,
went
well,
off on my
well,
got off
no,
on my
no, that was
soapbox
good. No,
about.
actually, what you feel are the major issues that we need to tackle
Oh
now
yeah,
before they really get
yeah,
horribly out of control, and some are out of control already.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one that's a kind of easy, I think, for anybody to just do in their life. It's just like think like, okay, you know, reducing and reusing. Let me focus a little bit on that. And it doesn't have to be hard. It could be something that you're like, actually, this could make my life easier. We don't I don't think we have to have this huge sense of like sacrifice, like a completely like overhaul my whole way of doing like just do a little bit. Do something that feels doable, right?
Right,
Um, and I think another area where people can make a difference. There's a lot of doom and gloom about the state of the environment. And I know that people feel passionately and are worried. But I plead with all people who are out there who are saying, like, the world is coming to an end. You need to pay attention. That if we get too much on the negative side, there will be people who go, what's the use?
right,
As soon as you go, what's the use? You're losing sight of the opportunities that are right in front of your face, right? You're when you lose hope, it's really makes things take a turn for the worse. And I've seen this, for example, with resource managers who have been, say, in a location for a long time. Maybe they've been there 20, 30 years, and they just see the decline of the ecosystem. And at a certain point, they just go, I don't know what to do. This is just so bad. And at that moment, I think it's really important to find a way to see the positive and see the hope. You got to see what's there, what parts of the ecosystem, what's working, what do we have to work with here, what can we help, what systems are there that we can help support. As soon as you reframe it into like, how can we help, how can we protect what's still there, you maintain the sense of hope and this sense that like, oh, I can take a positive action. And I think that's so important for us to maintain a positive attitude towards what we can do for the environment and not get sucked into it's useless. We can't do anything. Like just give up. No, don't give up. There's still hope.
wow. Well, that's a perfect way to end this interview. So, Heather, thank you so very much for doing the podcast today. I learned a lot, and thank you for letting me bounce different topics off of you. That I mean, that was very fun to do. And let's do this again sometime. I
Okay.
love this. Thank
Good
you.
conversation.
Thank you very much. Well, I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy having fun, interesting, and knowledgeable guests, and you are one of those. So thank you so very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that was Dr. Heather Pence, everybody. Thank you so very much, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. Everyone, stay safe, be careful out there, take care of one another, and we will talk again soon.